Vice Chairman Harry Lassane, members Bart Jackson, Jimmy Bailey, Donna Jacobs, Sonny Lemphasis, and McKenna Joyce, and Laquita Bryant Jenkins. These folks are all appointed by Charleston City Council. They're volunteers, and I know you join me in thanking them for their work for the city of Charleston. The way the meeting will work tonight is I'll read an item from the agenda into the record. Then we'll hear from staff about the item, any recommendation they may have. Then we'll hear from the applicant. And we'll hear from anyone that is supportive of the application, anyone that may have concerns about the application. Then we'll give the applicant a chance to answer any questions that were brought up as part of that application. At that time, we'll close the public hearing and the commission members will discuss, make motions, and vote on the item. If you get up to speak tonight, I ask you to come up to the podium, tell us who you are, where you live, and if you're representing anyone. If you have a cell phone, I'd ask you to turn it, and I'll do that myself, on silent, if I forget, or vibrate or whatever. And Mr. Morgan, will you introduce planning commission members who participate, planning commission people that will be participating tonight, and any agenda item changes?
Sure. So, given our pretty limited agenda tonight, we don't have a lot of staff members participating in the meeting per se, but our staff that is here in the audience, and so you know, is Philip Overcash, planner, Omar Mohammed, our planner who is assigned to the planning commission, and Molly Connor, who is here at Coleman's, the West Actually coordinator. And I'm Christopher Morgan.
Thank you. Also joined by Miss Erica Harrison. Thank you, Mr. Morgan. So no items, no changes since other than we have.
Changes to the agenda.
First item on the agenda is the minutes that were sent to commission members. Ms. Jacobs.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I did find a few errors in there that I've already given to Philip Clapper. One was a vote, and the other was like a duplication of a paragraph that looked weird because it's like you were asking twice for opposition, the people had already spoken.
Right.
And then another one was another small edit that I've already given them to Mr. Clapper for correction.
Okay, so
I would need a
I
motion.
believe I saw that about the way people voted, because I think it had a glimpse of voting something, at least, and things like
She
that.
didn't, Erica did.
All right, so there's a motion by Ms. Jacobs. There's a second to the motion.
For amended minutes.
But to approve the minutes as amended with the corrections by Ms. Jacobs. Second by Mr. Lassane. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? It's 9 in favor, none against. Thank you. First item on the agenda, or the next item on the agenda, is rezoning. Number 1 is 606 Savannah Highway, West Assenborn, PMS number 421 03-00180. Council District 9, approximately 0.34 acres, request rezoning from single family residential SR1 to residential office RO in Charleston County. More.
This property is stated on Savannah Highway. It is on the north side of Savannah Highway between Moore Drive and Parish Road, shown here. It's a single family structure. We'll show you some pictures of it in just a minute. It is immediately adjacent to another residential structure that was zoned RO a good while ago in Charleston County and then came into the city as RO. The Savannah Highway stops with this property here, not at the corner, but here, one away from the corner, and then also is over here. It's not indicated on this map, but those are in Savannah Highway overlay. And again, that is not a request tonight. Tonight's request is for the RO on this property, residential office. This is our comprehensive plan, which is this site had a request, I guess 6 or 8 years ago, before this comprehensive plan was adopted. And our comprehensive plan with the suburban designation, that does not necessarily mean that there are no commercial uses within a suburban designation in the comprehensive plan. It's just the level of intensity. And of course, RO is our probably least intensive commercial use that we have in the city. But that gives you a sense of where that is. And basically all the section of Savannah Highway is in the RO. So you see how areas of the Savannah Highway overlay are in this, suburban designation. So that's kind of where we're coming from. Of uses beyond just single family houses are allowed in the suburban designation. There's just a comparison here between the existing single family residential and the RO, the types of uses that are allowed. This is, I think, important to note over here, the Oro District has limited office uses within converted residential structures along major roadways. This district shall provide for the daily convenience and personal service needs. The surrounding communities shall be designated to mix compatibly and aid in the preservation and stabilization of the local neighborhood. The RO zoning district is not intended to permit the falsifiable housing stock. And you see that it does allow for, again, offices, barber and beauty shops, and offices and clinics and health practitioners. Here is an aerial image of the site. And you notice that there is a good bit of room in the rear of this property. Some properties along Savannah Highway don't have room in the rear for things like parking. A lot of the properties that are in the Savannah Highway overlay do, because that's one of the criteria of the Savannah Highway overlays, that you park to the rear, not out front. This property that is up tonight definitely has a good bit of room in the rear for parking, and would not need to utilize parking in front. So that would change here in line with the Savannah Highway overlay. Here you see the house a little bit closer up, and it has always in a residential structure. Our recommendation on this is for approval because we feel that given the adjacent RO zoning and the overall nature of our comprehensive plan recommendation, that an RO with its least lower intensities is appropriate in this location. And because of parking, one of the biggest issues that we see with the character of these RO properties, Savannah Highway properties, with that being able to be in the rear yard and the limited signage nature of the RO district, we felt like this was an appropriate request and recommend for its approval.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Is the applicant here? Hey, Ms. Powers, come on up.
Is this my time?
Yes, sir. How are you?
Good evening. Good evening. I want to thank my neighbors, friends, family, the council tonight. And Christopher Morgan, I want to thank you. I've been talking to you for 7, almost 8 years now. We didn't come out of the gate on this. And this has not been an easy process. And I'm happy to do this tonight. The reason why I'm here is I have I would say a very low impact, high end business. What I mean by that, I have clients that are willing to pay my price, but I am not willing to have lots of people around me when I do what I do. One of the big reasons why I'm right here. I can pass this around. This is my partner. This is my 30-year-old daughter. And you remember many years ago when we first began the process of all that's being done now, she was in the arms of her mother at the time. That was almost 30 years ago. And she's now my partner, and we run a very small business and very low impact. My neighbors, I have all my surrounding neighbors, and I'll show you very quickly. You've shown this map. We have Westwood over here. We have Cleo, who's the secretary for the church. Lovely lady. She says, I can't wait. She says, I'd love to be able to walk over and get my hair done. Ken Carter, lovely man. His property, and he recognizes the fact that his house is built on the property line. He can't get into his yard at all. But he's a good neighbor, and he says, look, I'll sign it, whatever. And what are they exactly signing? I have a letter of intent here, if you'd like to see what I had them sign, or if you'd like to read it. All of these neighbors, Mr. Ravenel, McClellan, and back over here to the Torres, and then here's my property. My parking lot, before I go there, across the street into Burnstown, and this whole area is all fenced. No impact whatsoever. I know you didn't ask about cars. There's probably less cars going into that lot than renting it to 4 college kids and their girlfriends. Seriously. I sold a property down in Megan on the water for retirement. I'm 67 years old. The first go around, sir, I was in my late 30s, very early 40s.
We were all young then.
Yes, sir. And I looked in the mirror and I realized I'm old. We're getting old. That was going to be my retirement home. But with 4 daughters, I'm here to tell you, there's no room for retirement. All right. So that said, I wanted to ease into a situation where work downstairs, family upstairs, much like the tradition of Charleston. It made Charleston the city that it is hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Families living upstairs above their businesses. Many times we've been called preying on a neighborhood or trying to take advantage of the city. This is my neighborhood. It's my neighborhood. I live in your neighborhood. It is my neighborhood. It's your neighborhood. It's your neighborhood. We're a family. And I don't want to see all this fighting and bickering. I would like to have a business where people can come and get their hair done, get to know the families, walking in, just keep it simple. I got 32 signatures up and down Parish, back through Westwood. I think I have 5 or 6 next door to you now, in the immediate area. And in fact, interestingly enough, there was one gentleman, his wife, they were in the salon and I said, would you sign this? And they lived back on the water and they said, well, we can't do that because we don't support zoning. I mean, just matter of fact. But the husband, I'm doing his wife's hair and he's sitting over on the couch and he opens his phone up and he says, come on. He said, where's that piece of paper? He says, of course I'll sign this. He says, it's clear, it's plain to see, you're surrounded by business. Right here, I'm the last man standing. This gentleman next door to me, you can see he cannot get into his yard. The lady on the other side, Cleo, faces the church and then the Catholic Church and then general business. And so I thought it not robbery to come here and ask for the community to support me in this venture. I have 112 supporters that live in and around the city and also back in the neighborhood. But these first ones that I mentioned to you were the immediate neighbors. Very quickly. This property here, I can tell you right here is 59 feet wide by 28 feet deep. Now, that's a very hard property to turn around if you have a truck. This property here, it's a beautiful house built where Brian used to live. 55 feet wide, 56 feet deep. He has 9 cars parked back here. This property here, there's a barber shop there. It's 59 feet wide by 27 feet deep. Property in mention, 73 feet deep by 70 feet wide. I need a place to park 6 cars. That's it. That is it. You might be talking 12 max on any given day, but generally less throughout the whole entire day. Okay. As far as safety goes, there is a 29-foot throat at the front of this. My throat coming into this property is the largest throat along the highway for a single family home. It tapers into a 12-foot driveway. There's parking for the handicap, and then there would be parking in the back. I would probably say at this point, it would be pretty unanimous as far as what I shared with you, but that's not for me to make that decision. What attracts, I'm 37 years in this community. I've lived on this highway for 34 years. My yard, where I'm wanting to park cars in the 606 is 5,100 square feet. Our present parking in commercial business is 3,100 square feet. I'm about integrity and I'm about safety. How many people in here have children? Can I see a raise of hands? Thank you. Do you ever remember the first time you gave the keys to your child and you said, go get me a gallon of milk or pick this up. And you were scared to death to hand them the key and they were just like all excited to get in that car and drive for the first time by themselves. I've raised 3 daughters on the highway. Can you imagine handing the keys and say, could you run down to Harris Teeter to pick up something? Worrying all the time about pulling in, pulling out. That was my life. So I'm very, very attentive to safety. And the email that went out, for most, all intents and purposes, I'm in agreement with. The only thing I disagree with is that I believe the time is now. Because the due diligence has been done. Christopher Morgan, I know, has worked very hard on this. And like I said, we've talked for a long time over the years and gave me some pointers. Miss Jacobs gave me some wonderful pointers, read her book, just to get a feel and an understanding for the neighborhood, a better understanding. And with that, I don't want to labor this any more than I need to. I think you did a fine job of presenting it, and hopefully I was able to hit on some small points that might have been missed. Is this a time where I ask if there's any questions?
So, well, what we'll do is we'll ask if anyone's in favor, and we'll ask if anyone concerned, then we'll give you a chance to rebut if any concerns you want to answer. So thank you.
Shall I sit down?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Powers. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Is anyone else would anyone here like to speak in favor of this application? Yes, sir. Come on up. Tell us who you are.
My name is John Wright. I reside at 1212 Ravendale Drive. That's down 17 a little ways on the frontage road, directly across from the Glass Onion Restaurant. So I'm within a block of his existing business and maybe 3-4 blocks of that where he wants to move to on the same side of the road. And I've lived there 27 years. And I've known Landis less time than that. I knew him when he was working downtown. And since he's moved to where he's at, and I've known him outside of his work as well as with his work. I know some of his coworkers. I know his daughters. I just couldn't understand when he told me, he said, yeah, I bought another place, but it seems like they're not going to want to let me zone it. And I thought, well, how many businesses are on that side of the street? And if you go from the Exxon shop by the old fashioned all the way to 526, excepting my little strip, which is technically not on the highway, it's a frontage road, the majority is business. I mean, there may be 5 other residential houses in that whole strip all the way to 526. And I just found it hard to believe that the city of Charleston would hold a man back like that. And anyway, I think he deserves to be rezoned.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming. Anyone else like to speak in favor? Yes, ma'am. Come on up.
I'm Grayson Jennings Watts, and I purchased the office at 553 Savannah Highway. We moved into it on Labor Day weekend. And I'm glad that you told me what his last name is because I never knew, but Landis lives next door to my new office, and his family, they are the nicest, cleanest, neatest people and the best neighbors. And I'm just so impressed with everything that they do next door, and they are creme de la creme people. So just wanted to speak in favor of them.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for coming. Anyone else like to speak in favor of the application? Yes, come on up.
I'm Carly Garberini, and I've known Landis and his family for about 17 years. I'm a longtime client. I understand concerns about changing the residential character of the neighborhood, but in this case, that ship has sailed a long time ago. These homes along Savannah Highway were built in the 40s. They're post-World War II homes. And at that time, Savannah Highway, was a 2-lane road. It's a 4-lane road now, and the volume of traffic, I have statistics here, is 37,000 cars a day at that point on Savannah Highway. So maintaining it as residential use is not a safe use. It would not be considered, I would not consider it a safe place to raise a family. and I don't know how many of you would. But I strongly support. I think of operating a salon, it's a quiet business. They will probably, normal operating hours are between 9 and 5 or 9 and 6. 9 to 5 is up. And I don't know how many chairs you plan on operating.
We've worked few, but we haven't.
So the volume of cars in the parking lot might be 4. But the business isn't going to contribute noise. I think a salon is an ideal neighborhood among residential neighbors, and I strongly support that.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for coming. Anyone else like to speak in favor of the application? Yes, sir. Come on up.
Scott McLean, how y'all doing?
Scott, how are you?
Yeah, I no longer live on Sedona. I was forced out basically by the pressure of traffic. My family had owned that house since the 1940s. I lived there until about 8 or 9 years ago. We went through rezoning. I did rent the house out for quite some time as an office, and I recently sold it. And I will tell you that, during our discussions the last time around, I was told that I was out there trying to make money on the house. I'll tell you, the house behind me sold for more than mine. Okay, on less property, less square feet, and had severe fire damage. So we really didn't make money by rezoning our properties. But I've known Landis a long time. He's an artist. He deserves this. Give it to him.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming. Yes, sir. Mr. Burris, you want to come on in?
I'll be quick.
Take your time.
I'm Lon Burris. I live in 423 Chevis Drive. And can anybody imagine that Landis is a part-time preacher? No, 2 things, real quick. Just, I've known Landis. He's a friend for 30 years. Number one, he's a man of high character. His moral compass is true north, number one. And number two, just want to remind you, he's been a loyal individual, family tax-paying citizen here in Charleston for nearly 40 years, as well as a businessman and contributed to the economy from his business for 27 or 30? 37 years. Just to remind you of those 2 things. So I would fully endorse the committee here to approve this.
Thank you, Mr. Burris. Thank you for coming. Anyone else like to speak in favor of this? Yes, ma'am. Come on up.
Everything that's already been said, but my name is Rebecca LaFar, and we lived many years next to when Lance moved in after Hurricane Hugo in 1990, I believe it was. They didn't have any children at the time. I lived at 553 Savannah Highway, which we sold in the year 2003, and they've been wonderful neighbors. I can speak, I've known them over 30 years, and they were next door neighbors, and the children would, their access to their carport was on the same side as my back door. So they knew my schedule when I'd go to work, when I'd come home, and what days I had off, and we did things together. But they've always been very thoughtful neighbors, very respectful of property, which is what you want to be a good neighbor. And I could speak very highly for his character. He is an artist. He's very talented. They've raised beautiful, talented daughters, and have been great neighbors. And I would recommend that you consider his all the businesses in House Street. We moved, I live, but still West Ashley. I live West Ashley. So, but we moved off the highway because it was really hard to get in and out as you get older. And we've gotten older, my sister and me. So we moved away to Hickory Hill, West Ashley. So we still know that Landis will maintain the character. He has a salon there. He will maintain the character of the neighborhood. He's invested in Windermere, the old Windermere, and he lives there. Plus, if he had a business across the street, I think it would be just a wonderful asset to the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else in favor? Yeah.
Do one more real quick.
And let me say, we'll let everyone speak, but Does anyone want to raise their hand if they're in favor of this, just so we get a feel? Okay, all right. Okay, I just want to get a feel. I don't make everyone come up and speak, so, okay, great, thank you. We'll get a feel for that. Is anyone else on the point that hadn't been made, like to come up and speak? Yes, sir. Mr. Mendoza, how are you?
Good, thank you, Joey. I'm hard of hearing, you, and I couldn't hear anything you were saying, you know. I hope they say anything, your voice is going fire, just keep it going, so. Thomas has worked hard, I'm amazed at how much he's going along to comply with regulations and things. Without highway, we have a responsibility, we are one in the city of Charleston, the way it's said in the United States. And I'm proud of people on Savannah Highway because they keep the grass up, keep the yard up and things like that. It's a wonderful entree into the city at no expense to the city. But you either own Savannah Highway or you're not. And if you're not on Savannah Highway, I've been very pleased with the improvement people are doing in their houses on both sides of Savannah Highway. Significant investment upgrade. At the same token, being on Savannah Highway with a low impact number of people in that business. It's not a retail business, it's not a dollar store and things there. The parking is appropriate. I think the neighborhood's appropriate, and as my wife said, it'd give her a place where she could get her hair done rather than go for a town. I'm a gun shop, we lived in that on Savannah Highway for 38 years. It's one of the fence up, is the front fence up, you don't have a drink afternoon, sound like it was the ocean, when you had a lot of cars going by. So I don't think we like the outlook. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mendoza. Thank you. Good to see you. Okay, any point that hadn't been made, would someone like to speak? Yes, sir, come on up.
I'm Jeffrey, and I'm a dentist west of Ashley. I have been in practice West Ashley area for 34 years. I've known Landison's family for 30 of those 34 years, and we have similar businesses in that we have high quality, low volume businesses, and it makes for good neighbors. And I just wanted to emphasize that point that the nature of this business is not a high volume business. I just want to make sure that that's clear. And everybody's talking about its integrity. It should be clear that that's true. Of the highest integrity on that. But I wanted to make that point.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming. Any other point that hadn't been made, that someone would like to make? Thank you. Oh, wait a minute. Yes, ma'am.
I have a lot of what I wanted to say. Everybody else has already said it. Hi, good evening. I wanted to ask.
Tell us who you are, if you saw it.
Sure. I'm Christina Mikolajczyk. I'm a small business owner in Charleston. I have been for over 2 decades. Located downtown Charleston right now. I have 5 children. I live in South Windermere. I've been living there for 13 years. And my oldest daughter, she also works at my practice, which is a spa. So you can have similar in common. And I've known Landis for over 20 some odd years. And because we're in very similar businesses, we understand how one another's businesses operate. I wanted to pose a question to everyone here and especially the board. How many small businesses make up the largest percentage of to support our local economy? What percentage do you believe small businesses will be?
Yeah.
It's high. It's 44%. And we contribute up to average nationally 64% of new jobs in our community. So that was one of the main points that I wanted to make is about small businesses and the city supporting small businesses and the city supporting the history that comes from Charleston being raised up by small businesses, by families coming here, immigrating here, having their businesses downstairs, residing upstairs, honoring that long-standing history. I think it's very important. And I think it's an important contribution to the community. I also run a low volume, higher end type business that doesn't require a lot of people coming in and out. I think the location is a perfect location for what he wants to do with it. I guess my last point would be about operating a small business. It doesn't come without its challenges. It definitely has its challenges, and it certainly had a lot of challenges after the pandemic, and some of us are still trying to recover from that time period. I believe in our community supporting local small businesses. There was a time period when I was moving from my original small location to a larger location on King Street. And there was a gap in time when we would be able to open, that we weren't able to open. I had no place to service my clients. So I approached Landis in 2009 and asked him if there was any way he would have a small portion of space that I could utilize when he didn't need to use it. And he allowed me to do that so that I could continue my business until we could finally open on King Street. And he wouldn't take $1 for it. So he's a very generous man. He's all about family, all about community, and taking care of other people.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thanks, Kevin. Any other point that hadn't been made in support of the application? If not, we'll hear from anyone that has opposition or concerned about the application. Come up. Yes, ma'am. Come on up, tell us who you are.
Kate Campbell, I live at 736 North Godfrey Park Place. I've been a resident of Moreland for, I guess, almost 5 years now, and lived in Abbeville for 13 years prior to that. Thank you for everybody coming out today, and my intent is not with the applicant or their business. I think it's more about the Savannah Highway Overlay District and the rezoning of properties along Savannah Highway. As you know, right now, the Savannah Highway Overlay District only goes to the corner of Parish Road, and it kind of includes that block. Christopher had that diagram up earlier. And the RO business, or the RO zoning, is a vehicle, of course, for low intensity businesses to exist along major corridors. I think some of the differences between the RO zoning regulations to that Savannah Highway overlay area is the RO zoning does allow for more building coverage, right? So if you have a new building that's being built, you can build a larger building on these lots. And so that is one difference, just to point out to the board. And it also, the RO zoning does not address additional driveways onto properties. And we've had recently another property in the neighborhood that is using a driveway onto Parish Road, therefore intensifying the traffic that comes through. And so that's just a concern with going with RO zoning versus the SH overlay district. And it's setting a precedent of rezoning properties in a residential area. I would be in favor of allowing the applicant to use the SH zoning, which would allow the applicant to achieve the same use under the RO zoning designation, but with those additional kind of protective elements of the SH overlay. If the planning commission does decide to approve this application tonight, I would ask that there be a condition that an additional driveway not be allowed to access Parish Road Drive if at any time the easement is granted on the property, the current RO corner lot, or if that owner purchases that property and has both properties in common ownership, that there would not be a second driveway to access Parish Road and create a loop just from the intensity of the traffic from Parish. But thank you for your time and service and for allowing me to speak.
Thank you for coming, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Come on up.
Hello, I'm Andrea Woodfield and I live at 752 Woodward Road in Moreland. And I'd just like to start by saying this is nothing about Landis. We like Landis. He does great hair. Not mine, I'm sorry to say. But and it's not about the business he runs or how he runs it. What this is about for Moreland residents is it's about Moreland. We're in West Ashley and we consist of about 200 homes. We're bordered by the Ashley River on one side. We're dissected by Highway 61, and then we're bordered on the other side by Highway 17. It is also a patchwork of city and county properties. And because of its proximity to downtown Charleston, it is constantly preyed upon by businesses and developers, and the residents of Moreland want to assure that it stays resident. The Savannah Highway overlay was created 25 years ago. And y'all may not know about this, but it was to protect the neighbors and to allow businesses to be on Highway 17. It provided the framework for these businesses and for Moreland to coexist. The city is currently going through a zoning rewrite to address all the zoning in the area. Even though 606 Savannah Highway is compromised, we agree. We think that location would be perfect for a hair salon, barber shop, some sort of low impact business. But as a Moreland resident, I do not support this request for rezoning from single family residence to residential office. What I do support is waiting for the city's zoning rewrite, which I hope addresses all of West Ashley neighborhoods and takes into considerations our concerns in order to keep the residential areas livable and the businesses viable. And with safety for pedestrians, bikers, cars, homeowners, businesses, homes, and other businesses as the top priorities. And one thing that Kate mentioned, and I'll show right here, the reason why this zoning is so important is this is the law office. Excuse me, where am I? Parish. This is the law office. This is the property we're talking about. This property and this property and this property, we are currently having an issue with. We had to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals because they wanted an after the fact variance. They just cut a driveway in on Parish Road to connect all three properties. And we didn't know anything about it. We didn't get a chance for public notice. We didn't get a chance to look at it. And that's what we know, may not be the Landis, but down the road, somebody could do that. So their big argument was, well, we could do it on Parish because it's so unsafe out here. And if Landis or another property owner chose to do it, we'd have two businesses doing that. What would stop him? Or the future, because when you get an easement like that, it lives with the property. So that's why we're concerned about zoning, because it's a slippery slope. Once you let one business entity do that, we will lose our borders. And that's why this is so important. It's Parish and Savannah Highway. So one question I have for this group is, could 606 Savannah Highway apply to be part of the Savannah Highway overlay? I don't know if there's a mechanism for that, but if they could do that, we wouldn't have to accept a zoning request or change, and they would get what they need to run their business. Don't know if that's an option, but I would love for planning to look at that for our behalf, because we are really targeted day in and day out. We were just here last week.
Well, Mr. Morgan hears you, so.
What's that?
Mr. Morgan hears you, so.
Okay, good. And it's for all these reasons that we ask that the planning commission deny the rezoning request, but to possibly work with us and the homeowner or the business owner to come up with a mutually beneficial decision.
Thank you, ma'am. And just for those commission members, this, Ms. Woodfield also sent in this email written response, and we had that in writing as well. So
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah. Anyone else like to speak in opposition to the application? Anyone else like to speak in opposition? Since I did this before, let me ask who's here in opposition that didn't speak. Anyone raise their hands? Okay, all right, just go through it. Mr. Powers, would you like to get up and address any of the concerns that were brought up? Thank you.
First off, we're not talking about this over here tonight. We're talking about this, 606. All these good people came out tonight as a character witness. I'm talking about a legacy. Now, would you please stand up? This is the future for Charleston right here. I have two more. Actually, I have three more. They're going to carry on the legacy. Dad, please don't sell the house. our home? I said, I won't. My children know what it's like to live on the highway and they know what safety is. I spoke to Torres almost 8 years ago. This is a law firm. You think the law firm is gonna let me funnel traffic through their yard when they know the logistics of what lawsuits can be? It's not gonna happen, ever. In fact, you and I will be, that's not what that ever does. In fact, most of everybody in this room, it'll be gone. This will remain a salon, a small impact salon with my daughter and I, and long after I'm gone, because this is her livelihood. Now, why did I wait this long to do it? Well, first off, I wanted to make sure it was safe. I wanted to make sure that everything was not just up to snuff, but above and beyond. There's an 8-foot fence out back with my neighbor presently right now. This neighbor here doesn't want a fence, but in order to comply with the city, I will comply with the city to do whatever is necessary. I have the room in this yard to do so. I have actually 25 feet more than I have presently in my present situation, and I always have extra room for overflow. I'm trying to think of anything, you know, like getting in and getting out. No disrespect to Miss Woodfield, but she lives on the river. I gotta tell you something, if I were to muscle my way through the traffic and then get off, and it's hard, I understand it's hard to get there, but every time I've ever been back in that neighborhood, but you have to understand from a highway liver. As soon as I pull it in on that street, I feel like I'm on vacation. I've got the river out there. And then you've got the white noise of the Ash River Bridge some nights, foghorn in the distance, and you've got a front row seat to the fireworks. Now, my fireworks is sirens and screeching brakes and ghetto music blasters and so on and so forth going around. The house that we presently live in is well insulated, very well insulated. I have a turnaround driveway in the front yard in order to get in and get out for the children. You could turn a Mack truck around this driveway back here in this yard. There's plenty of room. There's a 29-foot throat that comes in out of an angle, out of the east into the west, and you can come in very easily. Are there any questions?
So what, address us, because we're not gonna take questions.
sorry.
So that's all right.
Pardon me.
Thank you. But thank you. You finished with your applause. Thank you. Thank you for your
Yes,
time.
sir.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Power.
Thank you.
That'll close the public aspect of this. Just for the record, there were 2 written comments, one from Ms. Whitfield and also from Carol Lower. Lauer, okay, so we did get those as well, so just for the record, in opposition. That'll close the public aspect of this. I'd ask commission members, comments, Ms. Bailey?
Sure. Would you go back to the slide that lists the uses that are allowed? That one. So, Mr. Chairman, when I looked at tonight's agenda, when we got it last week, I thought we would be in and out of here probably in 10 minutes.
We all did.
And what's that? I don't think, for me personally, the answer to this question is that difficult, but I do think there are a few things that ought to be noted here. First of all, as awesome a guy as he sounds like, what we have to decide is, would we be okay with a total deadbeat doing those things that are listed in those uses? Because he ain't gonna have it forever. I hope his daughters have it for many years, but we have to think about the property.
Because the zoning passes with the property.
Exactly. And so I'm glad he's a great guy and a great neighbor and runs an awesome business, but that's what we have to decide if those things are appropriate in that location. And I think that stretch of the city is complicated. And I think it's not going to become easier to figure out when the zoning rewrite happens. In fact, I raised that question in the session we had with the zoning code rewrite consultants a couple of weeks ago, because what they are recommending is that we look at areas that have higher elevations for tremendous density. And that's an area that has a high elevation. And I asked them the question, Well, how do we sort out these things where we have situations like this, but they're high? And the recommendation is that's where we need to put density in the city. So I don't think that the zoning code rewrite is going to make the answer to this easier. I think it's going to make it more difficult. I think that is a beautiful neighborhood. We, my wife and I almost bought a house on Morton Avenue. God, probably 20 years ago, we almost bought a house. And I would say a lot of those homes had already been converted to businesses. I know Gerald's isn't that too far from there. Of course, there's a church there and some of those other little offices. And we never once thought that the neighborhood was less beautiful because of all those little businesses there. And so I think it's complicated. You know, I do believe that it's, I think we're going to have more people looking to convert from residential. It's a suboptimal location. I'm glad some people still choose to live there, but it is a suboptimal location for residential use, and a low impact like use like this, regardless of the owner, seems appropriate to me. I won't make a motion yet because I'm sure others want to.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey.
Speak to it.
Other comments, Ms. Jacobs?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and I have been involved with the Ashley Bridge District since its inception. And one of the recommendations out of the Ashley Bridge District was the Savannah Highway overlay that Mr. Bailey has mentioned, which was designed for the very reasons that we talked about tonight, to look at the borders of these beautiful residential neighborhoods and protect them in a way that was viable for a commerce out there, but also made the immediate adjacent residents in the back livable. Most of the homes that are in the overlay were actually guest homes. They were businesses to begin with, and then they converted to residential property. What's happened over time is these piecemeal creeps along the highway. We've gone around Wesley Drive, down Wesley Drive, into the Triangle of Windermere. We've had a couple other requests where this creeping out, either with the overlay or without the overlay. And I agree with the comment that we should, well, let me back up and say the consultants have recommended that we move the overlay forward in the zoning code. But there were members of the Ashley Bridge District that had gone to the city a couple of years ago and said, we need to relook at this overlay. It's 25 years old. It may need to be punched up or punched down one way or another. And we also need to look at the other two corridors that bisect it. At the time, the city said, we're not going to do anything like this now because we're going to rewrite the zoning code. So nothing's been done with the request that's 2 or 3 years old to look at the very request we're getting here right now. And what happens is when you piecemeal things like this, you start to cause sometimes problems. And I have no doubt that this land is great, but the zoning goes with the land. And so if for any reason something happens where they have to sell this land, and as Mr. Bailey pointed out, we get a not so high integrity character there, we can have a problem. We have had, because I followed them, we've had several requests like this brought before the commission at borders of neighborhoods. One particular, the guy came here, a lawyer, high integrity, said he was never going to do anything wrong with the neighborhood, convinced the neighborhood to let him rezone, and he's been nothing but a problem parking now in front of his building on Sycamore Avenue, a residential office. So we have several examples where we've listened to that and we've allowed it, and then it's become secondarily problematic for the city. And so I think there's a lot of concerns for the neighbors, rightfully so, that when we piecemeal this, we have problems. And when we've asked for a global review and said, pause, zoning code rewrite, I don't think it's a bad thing to think about that we should do that. Because I personally agree that those homes out there are no longer residentially viable. And that's why we created the overlay. And so we need to look more holistically instead of individually. And that's what my concern is. And I'm not going to make a motion either.
Thank you, Mr. Lasane.
I think other folks had their hands up. One minute.
Go ahead. Ms. Harrison.
So just looking at this from like a baseline concept, I mean, and I think, is there an image that we can see of the property? Just Yeah, that, well,
Aerial or what?
yeah, just an aerial, that'd be good. Is what, I mean, Christopher went over what you can do and what the permitted uses are, but there's even further more information about what an RO is. It's number one, the building cannot occupy more than 50% of the lot. You have side setbacks. There's even a holistic requirement about where you can park, like you alluded to, Doug. And I think I think the struggle here is that, yes, we all know that there's always that, there are good operators, and there are bad operators. And then sometimes it's an in-between, right? And then, but at the same time, with this particular portion of the city, it is very oriented towards business. And it's really difficult and challenging to say no to something like this when there's absolutely another one sitting right beside it that operates. And I think with what we're looking at is that you have a flow of traffic that's there. And there are businesses there. And I think with this particular RO designation, it also helps protect these type of buildings. To operate in a small space like that it means that you really do care about where you are. My office, I almost had to fight to get a CT designation on it, and I operate in 400 square feet, or 430 square feet. It's just enough. And so sometimes it's these little spaces that are just enough for that individual or for that business. And it's not necessarily a matter of survival. It's just what that person just wants or desires. And it's easy to maintain and take care of, and you become integrated into your community. And obviously that's clear. So I think I think in these instances, it's not necessarily the operator, it's how do we protect those buildings themselves and make sure that they are very, really viable? Because, I can't imagine trying to, I see people trying to get in and get out of the yards and trying to do that. It's almost untenable sometimes. So, and just think about the fact that 10 years from now, we're supposed to see 16,000 more people in the city. So I think this is when you have to figure out how do you protect these small areas. And one thing that I will say is that, this particular corridor is very interesting because it's part of Highway 17. But if we look at how Highway 17 has evolved, if you look at the crosstown, you can't walk down the crosstown to a business. And I think that's a huge difference here when you look at the evolution of Highway 17 and how it's transected neighborhoods, but how this particular designation has really helped create kind of almost a cohesiveness.
Just one point, that the residential office that sits next to it was an office in the county. So when it was annexed into the city, it came with the zoning. That wasn't a conversion.
Right.
Yeah.
How about Mr. Hussein?
Mr. Morgan, the Savannah Highway Overlay District, is there any explanation why it stopped at Parish Road and didn't continue all the way down to Moore Drive?
It was based on the planning efforts that were very kind of neighborhood centric. Back in the late 90s, that said that, and there was also a national bridge district plan that said that was an appropriate place to stop. And I think part of it also dealt with the fact that most of the houses that are, over here on the south side of Savannah Highway.
Burns downside.
Yeah, the Burns downside. It's very difficult to park in their rear yard. I should clarify that Savannah Highway overlay, well, this site definitely would have the parking in the rear. The RO district requires that the parking be in the rear. So, I think that could assuage some fears of some of the kind of creep of further commercialization onto lots that might not be appropriate for it, because if you stick with RO or Savannah Highway overlay, you aren't going to see that ability to have other businesses there if they can't park in the rear. And in this instance, they can park in the rear.
Yeah, so thank you. That's very helpful. For me, this is a hard one. I confess, this is a hard one. But I think for me, it's about a precedent that we might set. And honestly, I don't see another property like that in this corridor. Everything else is in the overlay. Except for this little strip. And one side is already RO, the other side, they can't park in the back because there's no room for a driveway. And then the next house faces more drive, so it's not appropriate for RO zoning. So this is kind of it's a unicorn. And I honestly, you know, that's got a big driveway already. I mean, it kind of looks like it might already be a residential office structure. So, I don't know. This is a hard one, but I think I'm gonna support it. So.
I think I'm gonna support it as well, because I really think that in RO zoning, that it actually protects the residential, you know,
Character of it.
character of the entire neighborhood. And it is it is a unicorn. It is a one-off, and there is nothing else there. And I understand the challenge that's happened further up on Parish Road with the driveway. And Donna and I were just having a discussion about that. I don't think that's gonna happen in this case. I think it's a property that I want to support local businesses, and I know that the land goes with the land and not with the businesses, but they can't do, I think if we wait for the zoning rewrite, as Donna mentioned, they could possibly do something higher density there. And so I think the RO zoning protects that. And I don't see it being residential. I see it being a residential office. That's the least in zoning we can have. And I think it's a suitable property. So I'm going to vote in favor of it.
Okay. Any other comments? If not, is there motions? Mr. Baylor?
I move to approve the request presented by Mr. Morgan.
Okay. Second by Ms. Lampison. Any other questions or comments?
I do want to say that also with this particular designation, it would also be subject to DRB, and there's even a height restriction on this property too. So, I mean, there are a lot of restrictions. I mean,
It'll still be a process to go through.
right. It's not only a process, but I'm saying it's highly restrictive.
It's restricted.
It's
right.
very restrictive.
That's why I think it's a great zoning.
And we appreciate everyone coming out because it is a very sensitive issue, and we appreciate all the input. Mr. Lasane?
I'd like to hear from Ms. Jacobs because she looked like she was about to speak when I
Go
said
ahead.
something. So I'm always, this is your neighborhood, so I'm really interested in what you had to say.
Well, and I'm hearing what everybody's saying, and quite frankly, I'm not going to support it just as a matter of principle, because we asked the city 2 years ago to look at all of this for us globally, and we were told to wait for the rewrite. And so I don't know where it's going to be in the rewrite, because you talk about the unicorn, but this property came up in 2016 by another owner. It was denied by this commission for a residential office. The house next door to it came up for rezoning and was denied also. So it is sitting in, and the house on the corner that they mentioned with the driveway, it faces Parish. It came to this commission to be readdressed on Savannah Highway so it could come into the overlay, and it's been consistently denied. So that was bought by the two adjacent property owners to create that driveway, to make everything. And now what you have is ingress and egress of a commercial property on a neighborhood street, which we should think about. There's nothing preventing the house that faces Teresa Drive there on that corner to do the same thing, to come and readdress itself on Savannah Highway, ask to be residential office, build a driveway in there to make all three of those businesses, because you can combine the lot line for two buildings on the overlay. So you're right in the sense that it is a unicorn. I'm trying to figure out how to make this work. But at the same time, when you just creep one at a time without looking holistically, and we're talking about neighborhoods now, the Windermere is 100 years old. So we should look at this historically too, and not for the fact that I believe that anybody would live in this house and raise a family, but how do we continue to really make it the most commercially viable, residential, livable, And I speak from somebody that backs right up to Avondale Wine and Cheese, that during the pandemic, they were giving me my wine and cheese over my fence, okay? So I speak to the fact that it's real critical to think about that when we do this, and not just one off, with an individual who's probably gonna do a fantastic job. His daughter will do a fantastic job. But I think we need to look holistically here for the sake of West Ashley. Because there have been several properties that we've looked at in West Ashley it's a one-off and we do it, and they've become problematic to the neighborhoods because I know the precedents, and they've come to me and they said, we wish we had stopped this with y'all. And so I don't want this to be another one that happens like that.
Yeah, I would just say, respectfully, all those other situations that you mentioned where people might come back. I mean, I would oppose those. I mean, those are not appropriate. I just think this is I'm going to support it because I think this is a unique.
I just think we need to have the conversation. So we can pressure
I agree,
the
and that's why I
city.
want to hear from you.
That's why, because it's the pressure to the city to really come back to the overlay and look at it, because it was requested and we were told to wait.
We have a motion by Mr. Bailey. Go ahead, Ms. Lynch. Give us a comment.
Is there any way of, putting something in it that disallows any kind of easement to one of the, to, I guess it would be.
Conditions, so standard rezoning requests.
How about, what, on the zoning rewrite, is there any way, I mean, I'm just looking ahead. I mean, if that's something that we can really address in the zoning rewrite, that can't happen, I would like to encourage, and it really has nothing to do with this. I'm in favor of this. If it has nothing to do, I mean, if it can help the zoning rewrite, I would like for you to, put that on a note to, in the event we go further down Savannah Highway. But I don't think there's anything else, like Harry said, I don't think there's anything else really, any other property basically further down. And I think it's I agree with what you said. And I don't, this isn't spot zoning because it's right next door to one. So and if we were doing the rezoning, I would not support it just because it is spot zoning, but there is one next door and the neighbors are not complaining. And so they appear to think that it's not going to impact their lives very much.
And just for the record, I'm going to support the motion because I believe that some of the options that were talked about in Ms. Jacobs and others are viable, but it could be way down the road. We talk about the zoning code rewrite, we talk about looking at this area again. It take a long time.
So
So
we asked for it 2 years ago. That's the question. That's the
appreciate it. So there's a motion by Mr. Bailey, second by Ms. Lempski, to approve the application. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone in opposition?
I am.
Okay, so we have, I think, 7 in favor of the application and 2 in opposition.
Is it 2 opposition or what? 2.
No, Ms. Jacobs and Ms.
Okay.
Jacobs, and 2 in opposition.
So I don't-
So that is approved. So thank you all. Appreciate everyone coming. Thank you. Thank you. Next item, we're gonna take some of these votes together. Give it another. Please also, we're trying to have a meeting. Thank you. Mr. Morgan, can we take any of these zoning? Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, get y'all to move out a little bit, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Wait a second. What are we gonna do with it? Where's trash?
I didn't go let them out. Mr. Morgan, we can take some people. Together.
So we've got 2901 highway.
Pick up a little bit louder, please. Thank you.
2901 Maybank Highway, recent annexation. The request is for general business. I'm sorry, limited business, excuse me. And it was zoned in Maybank overlay in Charleston County. And the county permitted it for a restaurant that is in place on the site, and we'll give you an image of that. Here it is in our comprehensive plan, it's on neighborhood edge, and so the limited business would be in line with neighborhood edge. Image we have here of it shows the aerial with the new restaurant that's on it right here. And this is a view from Maybank Highway of the newly constructed restaurant on the site. And staff's recommending approval of limited business for this
Would
site.
anyone like to speak on this application? If not, is there a motion? Ms. Bailey moves to approve. Second by Mr. Lassane, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone in opposition? I think that's 9 in favor, not opposed. I'm assuming we can take a few of these together, correct?
Yeah, I think we can take the other ones together.
Okay, so number 2 is 1540 Jones Street, PMS number 3521300145. Number 3 is
And
1912.
just to point out, number 2 is recommended for single and two family residential FTR.
Okay.
So everybody knows that.
Okay. And number 3 is Hollings Road, James Allen, TMS number 3400100125. I would say SR1 is zoned R4 in the county. Number 4 is 2450 Birkenhead Drive, West Has TMS number 3091300008. It is recommended SR1, it was R4 in the county. Number 5 is 2965 Innisbrook Court, TMS number 3581000046. Again, R1 is recommendation, it was R4 in the county. Mr. Morgan, you want to speak to all of these?
Yeah, and you have outlined them, and again, these are the closest, most compatible zonings in the city for how the properties are used.
Would anyone like to speak on any of these items, number 2 through 5? Not, is there a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Lassane?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Harrison, to support all of the items 2 through 5. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. And then on opposition, that's 9 in favor, none opposed. So that is basically the agenda. Planning Commission discussion. Mr. Morgan, any updates we need to know about?
We did leave that placeholder if you all wanted to discuss any more on the format, procedure, rules. If not, that's fine with us. If you wanted any update from us, we did work and say that obviously, thank you all for attending the online zoning ordinance discussion that was had. And I know we ran out of time on that one. We're going to reschedule some time. We think it probably will be in early May, but we're working with the consultants on a time that works on their schedule. That would be another online.
Should the meeting, so much Jacobs, there was good attendance at that meeting. At the longshoreman's home.
I just want to compliment staff for responding to the request. I think, speak for myself, but maybe I'm speaking for the commission. I think that was a good use of our time. It was a good way to do that kind of meeting. And I also want to say thank you for the good communication we're getting. I mean, all the citizens are getting by email from all the plan Charleston and all these updates we're getting, because there's a lot going on. And it's a really good way for us to see what's happening. And I think it's a good, I mean, it's just good practice, best practice for communicating with citizens. So I agree.
And I thank Mr. Lassane for chairing that meeting. I had a client of my council. Thank you for chairing that. Ms. Jacobs.
I wanted to offer to the commission, I attended a webinar. The Maryland Department of Planning puts on a whole really good series of webinars that Mandy Herring alerted me to.
Maryland Department.
Maryland Department. Well, it's the state of Maryland, you know, the whole state, not just. And they're actually quite good, and they feed them. They're coming up weekly, so the people that need CEUs, they're 1.5 hours, and they're really good. The one I just attended was called "How Zoning Killed the American City," and it's actually speaks so tightly to what we're going through right now. And they send the recording out, and I have it. So if anybody would like to, it's an hour and a half. 45 minutes of your question and answers. The meat of it's in 45 minutes. It's with the director of Smart Growth America, which they use a lot of form-based codes, which they're recommending form-based codes for this. And there is one of the websites that Amy from Dover Cole at the recent public hearing gave me, because they're doing the form-based code thought process. It's just formbasedcodes.org. And there are some slides on there. I was having a problem loading them the other night, but they also have where they offer educational programs to come to cities to teach people about form-based code. So if we're moving in that direction, it's just an opportunity. And then the other part of the lecture was from a man who is working on his PhD. And they go through, what they do, which is quite good, is they show you the things that are working and they show you the cities that they're working in. So you have specific references. It's not just an academic exercise. So I'm happy to share. I didn't want to, I know it's not in our interest to share globally, but I'm happy just to share the video with anybody that would like to see it.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? Any questions, updates? If not.
I don't know what Mr. Miller's sitting back there wanting to do.
I will say, when I sat through that webinar, let's not discuss